This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain an action, drama, and fantasy film called Along with the Gods, The Two Worlds. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. During a raging fire in Seoul, firefighter Kim Ja-hong clutches a child in his hand as he hangs by a smoldering rope. Another firefighter tries to help him, but the rope breaks before Ja-hong can grab his hand. After hitting the ground, Ja-hong's life flashes before his eyes. The girl in his arms gets up and runs to her parents. Ja-hong follows the girl and tries to talk to her, but nobody pays attention to him. Ja-hong suddenly hears someone calling his name. When he looks around, he sees a man and a woman staring at him without concern for the blaze around them. Deok-choon and Hae Won-maek commend him for his heroic act and note that he's a paragon, which is rare in the afterlife. After notifying Ja-hong of the time of his death, they introduce themselves as guardians, who will defend him through the 7 trials in the afterlife over 49 days. Ja-hong looks at his corpse in confusion as the other firefighters grieve for him. As he gets pulled into the afterlife, Ja-hong begs the guardians to let him see his mother one last time, but they just smile at him. As they enter the gate to the afterlife, the guardians introduce Ja-hong to their leader, Gang Rim. After Deok-choon inserts Ja-hong's card at a device by the gate, she gleefully confirms that he's a real paragon and notes that his chances of reincarnation are very high. Upon entering the gate, Won-maek is puzzled to find themselves in the volcano of the damned because it's meant for people who committed murder. The guardians inform Ja-hong that he will be tried for betrayal, violence, filial impiety, murder, indolence, deceit, and injustice over the next 49 days. King Ja-hong will assign the order of the trial, starting from the lightest sin to the heaviest. Ja-hong insists that he never harmed anyone, but the trial will also look at indirect murders or actions that influenced other people's deaths. During the trial, the god of murder discovers that he left a colleague trapped inside a burning building. One of the prosecutors argued that Ja-hong failed to save his colleague due to his indecisiveness and fear. However, the guardians point out that Ja-hong's colleague asked him to save the injured first before helping him. That night, Ja-hong was able to save 8 people from the fire. He tried to go back for his colleague, but the other firefighters held him back because the building was about to collapse. The god of murder acquits Ja-hong because the death of his colleague allowed him to save many more lives. On their way to the River of Indolence, Ja-hong asks the guardians what they'll get for defending him. Won-maek says they only want him to be reincarnated, but Ja-hong doesn't want to go through with it. Deok-choon confesses that King Ja-hong promised to reincarnate them if they help reincarnate 49 souls within a century. Ja-hong will be the 48th reincarnation if he passes the trial. As they near their destination, Gang Rim warns Ja-hong not to talk back to the goddess of indolence during the trial. When they present their case to the goddess of indolence, she's impressed because Ja-hong spent most of his life saving others. However, the goddess is disappointed to hear when Ja-hong confesses that he did it for money. The goddess condemns him for serving the money god. As his raft floats to the edge of the river, Gang Rim and Won-maek swim after Ja-hong and tell the goddess to look at the mirror of karma to see his true motivations. Gang Rim notes that Ja-hong took on several part-time jobs apart from being a firefighter. Ja-hong had no day off, and the only time he rested was on the day of his death. He sent all the money he earned to pay for his ailing mother's treatment and his younger brother's tuition for law school. The goddess declares Ja-hong not guilty of indolence after realizing that he wasn't motivated by selfish interests. When they reach the Blade Forest, Gang Rim castigates Ja-hong for speaking to the goddess of indolence. Won-maek advises him to follow their instructions because he'll be able to visit his mother in her dreams before reincarnation. Ja-hong becomes determined to be reincarnated upon learning about the dream visitation. During a boat ride to the next trial, the Guardians notice drastic changes in their surroundings. Gang Rim surmises that one of Ja-hong's family members must have died and turned into a vengeful spirit. Soon, Hell Ghouls chase after them, so Gang Rim and Won-maek draw their large blades to defend themselves. Gang Rim falls off the boat when a ghoul attacks him, but he manages to hang on. Won-maek smashes a column on the side of the mountain to keep the ghouls from following them. After losing the ghouls, Won-maek expresses his fears that they won't complete the trials in 49 days because the vengeful spirit is speeding up the time. Gang Rim asks Deok-choon to lead so he can go to the living world to investigate. When Gang Rim visits Jang Ho's mother, he goes back a few days in time and sees Ja-hong's brother, Soo-hong, promising to take care of his mother when he gets discharged from the army in 2 weeks. When he gets back to the present, Gang Rim is taken aback when he realizes that Soo-hong's mother can see him. The mute woman asks Gang Rim who he is using sign language. He explains that he wants to pay proper respects to Jang Ho because her son saved his life. When the woman leaves the room, he orders Soo-hong's ghost to tell him the place of his death. However, Soo-hong flees from him, so Gang Rim chases after the ghost outside. Soon, ghouls catch up to the group in the forest, but King Yeomra appears. Yeomra asks them why the ghouls emerged in his realm, so the Guardians disclose that Gang Rim went to the living world to investigate. Hearing that the vengeful spirit will be incinerated, Ja-hong threatens the king, believing that the spirit is his mother. As Won-maek pulls Ja-hong away from Yeomra, the king warns them that he'll go to the living world himself if Gang Rim doesn't annihilate the vengeful spirit soon. Gang Rim visits the barracks and learns that Soo-hong has been missing for 3 days. His fellow officers believe that he deserted just weeks before he was about to be discharged. Gang Rim goes back in time and witnesses Soo-hong protecting a private named Dong Yeon from bullies. When he sees Dong Yeon speaking to First Lieutenant Park, Gang Rim poses as a lieutenant colonel to interrogate the superior officer. Ja-hong soon faces the goddess of deceit because he wrote numerous letters to his dead colleague's daughter and pretended to be her father. Ja-hong explains that it was the only thing he could do to console her. At the barracks, Gang Rim asks Park why Soo-hong's mother hasn't been notified about her son's desertion. Park explains that the mother could go into shock if she finds out that her son is missing. Gang Rim accuses Park of burying Soo-hong's corpse and asks him where to hide it. However, the conversation is interrupted when Won-maek asks for his help to stop the goddess of deceit from cutting Ja-hong's tongue. Gang Rim establishes a link with Deok-choon to defend Ja-hong. He reveals that Ja-hong also wrote several deceitful letters to his mother. In those letters, Ja-hong claimed that he is now raising his own family to keep his mother from worrying about him. Gang Rim notes that Ja-hong's mother overcame her illness and led a fulfilling life because those letters gave her hope. The prosecutors point out that the mother and the child would be anguished if they find out that Ja-hong lied, but the Guardians argue that their sense of loss would be just as painful if they hadn't read the letters. The goddess of deceit dismisses the charges after learning that there was a similar case in the past. As they prepare for the next trial, Ja-hong notes that he's desperate to see his mom because he bought her a rice cooker that was left at the fire station. Apart from the rice cooker, he also wrote a letter to tell his mother the truth. Soon, Gang Rim contacts them to tell Ja-hong that his mother is alive. However, he lies that Soo-hong is alive and doing well in the military. Gang Rim goes back in time to witness how Soo-hong died. That night, Soo-hong consoles Dong Yeon, who is worried about what will happen to him when Soo-hong is discharged. Dong Yeon nervously plays with the safety switch of his firearm as he explains that he's also worried about Soo-hong because of his brother's death. Soo-hong tells him not to waste tears on the past and embraces him. Soo-hong notices that his firearm is not in the proper position, so he tells Dong Yeon to hold it properly. When Dong Yeon adjusts his firearm, he accidentally shoots Soo-hong. As he bleeds out, Soo-hong instructs Dong Yeon to call Park and keep others from finding out. Won-maek tells Ja-hong that the next trial would be easy for him because it's for unjust people. The glacial mountains suddenly crumble behind them, so the group runs to a cable car. When Park arrives at the guard station, he tries to revive Soo-hong. After learning that Dong Yeon accidentally shot Soo-hong, Park takes the bullet casing and instructs Dong Yeon to help him clean up and bury the body. Gang Rim realizes that Soo-hong is still moving, but the two soldiers fail to see. Upon arriving in Injustice Hell, Deok-choon explains that the people there are locked in ice for refusing to help those in need. Won-maek explains that criminals who pass the statutes of limitations are not spared in hell. The longer they kept their crimes hidden, the harsher their punishment would be. As they go on their way, Ja-hong reminisces about the time Soo-hong wanted to go on a cable car ride. Deok-choon says he envies Ja-hong because she has no memory of her life. She explains that only Gang Rim can remember his past. Deok-choon likes listening to the souls she defends because tragic memories and even the places in the afterlife can be beautiful. Won-maek scolds her and reminds them that they are in hell. As he continues his rant, he inadvertently reveals that Ja-hong's brother is the vengeful spirit who's been altering the afterlife. One of the cables holding up the car suddenly breaks. Deok-choon falls off the car, but Won-maek catches her. Ja-hong ties himself to a rope and rescues Deok-choon. While Gang Rim investigates Soo-hong's grave, Won-maek appears behind Gang Rim and scolds him for interfering with the living. Gang Rim wants to give Soo-hong a proper burial, but Won-maek wants to burn the body to eliminate the vengeful spirit. Won-maek shoots fireballs at him, but Gang Rim deflects them. He tells Won-maek to go back to the afterlife and promises to take care of the vengeful spirit. At the barracks, Park gives Dong Yeon 3 days off to keep his mind off Soo-hong's death. Soo-hong watches the two, but he leaves when Gang Rim arrives. After passing through Injustice Hell, the group arrives in the Betrayal Hell, where people who betrayed faith are locked away in a mirror before they are obliterated. Deok-choon explains that the goddess of betrayal only forgives betrayals she considers beautiful, such as betrayals of conscience and selfless betrayals. She notes that Ja-hong gets a free pass through Betrayal Hell because he is righteous. Dong Yeon ends up drinking in a club to forget about the incident at the barracks. Soo-hong tries to drop a mirror ball on him, but he flees when he sees Gang Rim. The Guardian chases Soo-hong all over the city until he catches him in a tower. Gang Rim asks Soo-hong to give up his grudge and offers to defend him so he can be reincarnated. He notes that Ja-hong is in danger because of him, but Soo-hong doesn't care since Ja-hong left them and never came back. Gang Rim understands Soo-hong's rage, but Soo-hong contends that no one can fathom the pain of being buried alive. Gang Rim shares Soo-hong's feelings as he witnessed his father die in the same way. Soo-hong eventually breaks free from Gang Rim's ropes and flees. Gang Rim returns to the afterlife to tell the other Guardians what he learned from Soo-hong. Won-maek asks him to eliminate Soo-hong quickly because the ghouls could catch up to them. However, Ja-hong begs Gang Rim to spare his brother. Dong Yeon stops by Soo-hong's house and leaves his mother a map of the location of Soo-hong's body. Meanwhile, the trio reaches the pit that leads to Violence Hell. Won-maek instructs Ja-hong to jump after assuring him that the journey would be easy for him, but Ja-hong is hesitant, so he pushes him. Back in the living world, Dong Yeon attempts to hang himself, so Soo-hong begs Gang Rim to save him. However, Gang Rim should not interfere with the living. Soo-hong promises that he'll come with him if he saves Dong Yeon, so Gang Rim cuts the rope. Back in the pit, the trio floats effortlessly, but they suddenly fall because of Gang Rim's actions. Won-maek and Ja-hong end up on a floating rock, but they continue their fall when it goes off balance. In the living world, Soo-hong begs Gang Rim to relay his last message to Dong Yeon. As the trio keeps falling in the pit, Ja-hong grabs Deok-choon to protect her from the fall. However, they begin floating again after Gang Rim finishes relaying Soo-hong's message to Dong Yeon. When they reach Violence Hell, the prosecutors narrate how Ja-hong viciously beat his brother up when he was in high school. They note that Ja-hong did it when Soo-hong was suffering from malnutrition. The god of violence convicts him after learning that Soo-hong never forgave him for the beating. When Won-maek contacts Gang Rim, he instructs Deok-choon to request a combined trial. When Deok-choon makes the request, the prosecutors ask her if she knows the consequences. If Ja-hong is found guilty, his punishment will be doubled, and his guardians will be stripped of their privileges. The god of violence grants the request when the prosecutors agree to the deal. Soo-hong becomes a normal ghost after Gang Rim takes him to his grave. On their way to the barracks, Soo-hong reveals that Ja-hong beat him up because he stopped Ja-hong from smothering their mother. Ja-hong admits that he wanted to kill the whole family, including himself, that night. When he failed, he decided to leave their home. At the army base, Soo-hong sees his mother arrive to look for him. Park drives her away for fear of getting caught for covering up Soo-hong's death. In the afterlife, ghouls emerge to attack the trio, but Won-maek effortlessly defeats them. Meanwhile, Soo-hong's mother insists on finding her son, so Park shoves her away. Soo-hong is enraged when he sees her fall unconscious. He turns into a vengeful spirit again and conjures up a tornado to attack everyone in the barracks. Park tries to escape, but his truck is sucked into the tornado. Gang Rim calls Won-maek to help him save Park. As they deal with Soo-hong, Ja-hong sinks in quicksand. Soo-hong ceases his attack when he sees Ja-hong sinking. Soon, Yeomra arrives and immediately declares Ja-hong guilty for attempting to kill his mother. Deok-choon argues that there was no victim because his mother was unconscious. However, Yeomra brings up the Mirror of Karma to reveal that she knew about the murder attempt. She didn't resist, believing that only her death would allow her sons to live comfortably. Ja-hong acknowledges that he deserves punishment, but he begs Yeomra to let him see his mother so he can apologize. However, Yeomra points out that he had plenty of time to do that when he was alive. As the prosecutors read the verdict, they hear Soo-hong speaking to his mother in her dream. Soo-hong asks her not to visit him at the base because he has been assigned to become a judge in heaven. When he asks if she knew about Ja-hong's attempt to kill her, she explains using her voice that her sons didn't do anything wrong because she was a terrible mother. She tearfully embraces him and tells him she's sorry. Yeomra reverses the verdict on the account that Ja-hong's mother forgave him. As he begins to reincarnate, Ja-hong thanks Deok-choon for defending him. Back at the barracks, Won-maek finds out that Soo-hong is another paragon. As he starts to complain, Gang Rim realizes that Won-maek wasn't the one who attacked when he refused to incinerate Soo-hong's body. It was Yeomra in disguise. Days later, Gang Rim delivers Ja-hong's rice cooker and letter to his mother. In the letter, Ja-hong confesses that he lied about having a family. He promises to come back home before it's too late. Gang Rim wonders why he wasn't punished for interfering with the living. So he takes Soo-hong and the Guardians to the hell of filial impiety to confront Yeomra. Before attacking Yeomra's army, Gang Rim reminds Deok-choon that Soo-hong is the last soul they need to defend so they can be reincarnated.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.